here for another lesson in the Build Your Own BPOS course. Hopefully, since the last lesson, you were able to complete some related product profile tasks and maybe add some and use them in your database. If so, that'll come in handy today as we look at accounts and account profiles. There is a lot to cover in this lesson, but also a lot of the concepts and things that we'll see for accounts are similar to other components that we've seen previously. So that should save us some time not needing to thoroughly explain some of the concepts that we've gone over in the past. Anyway, for an agenda for today, we will just start with an overview of what accounts are in BPOS and how they can be used in different systems. Then, of course, we'll get into all the configuration and maintenance aspects, all the system-wide considerations at the various levels of system setup, then organizing an account list, creating accounts, and account settings. And after we get through all of that, we'll finish with a look at account profiles. So speaking of similar concepts that we've seen in the past, you'll see just how similar account profiles are to the product profiles and the different ways that we can implement account profiles after creating them. So first things first, before we even get into any account maintenance or any sort of system-related maintenance, what are accounts in BPOS and what can they be used for? Simple question with a relatively simple answer, although there are a couple different broad purposes for implementing accounts. They may be used for internal purposes, so something like having accounts for employees as a means of applying some staff discount or implementing an internal staff pricing policy. And perhaps though the more common use is that they can be used externally for customers. That might be for discounting or applying a pricing policy for them, which is often used along with something like account tiering, which we'll get into in a few minutes when we get to setting up the account list and account groups. Accounts may also be used externally for loyalty programs, which often includes point systems. That'll actually be the topic of the next lesson, will be our points and points profiles. Or external accounts may be used simply to capture and track account sales with maybe some minor benefits to the account holder from time to time. But by tracking and analyzing sales data, the business may be able to create marketing and promotions based on sales trends, and combined with other account details, they can cater and create some marketing and promotions that way. Or, as we'll see when we get into account profiles later, we can use some account data and settings along with possibly custom data using custom fields to create account profiles. Those could then be used to serve specialized promotions to account holders. But like I said, we'll get into that towards the end of this lesson. Now, the other major thing that accounts can be used for is membership systems. But that is an enhancement to our standard accounts and a whole other lesson on its own that we'll get to later in the course. Lastly, another thing that accounts can be used for externally is with interfaces and integrations to third parties. We certainly will not be getting into any of those in this course, but just so you know that that is a fairly common use for accounts as well, but a much higher level topic. Some integrations and interfaces require probably a 30+ minute lesson on their own. But yeah, with a lot of our third-party integrations and interfaces, we can match account records and send and receive account data, such as points totals. Anyway, for now, why don't we get into back office and we'll go through some system-wide account considerations and then into account settings themselves. Alright, if we check out global settings first, there are a few important things here that we'll touch on, some of which we have gone over in the past, but should make a bit more sense today as we're going through accounts. So here in the multi-venue section, we've got this account get from HO, and we have account lists get from HO. So these both have an impact on accounts themselves and also till performance. Obviously, these are specifically related to multi-venues, which, as I've said in the past, we're not covering in detail in this course, but at least mentioning little helpful tidbits here or there as we come across settings that are related to the lesson's topics. Anyway, for these flags, based on their respective names, we can control if tills in remote venues, will request account info and data or account lists from head office. The effect is that if the accounts one is on and the head office is not connected to the remote venue, the local accounts data from the venue will be used. However, in that case, charging and points, account charging, I should say, and points redemption will be unavailable. And for the account list flag, if that's disabled, account groups from the local venue database will be used. However, a positive to leaving it disabled is that it will save bandwidth when communicating with the head office. All right, if we move over to the flags tab, while we're chatting about multi-venues, one flag here in particular that is directly related to those multi-venue flags is this one, no account in local database. So when this is enabled for a venue, when this is enabled here at the global level, then when we are creating local databases for offline workstations, the database will not include account data. As such, we would not want to have the multi-venue flags off and also have this flag on, because then we might run into a scenario where a till goes offline and has no account data at all. Then if I skip over to the Other Names tab, we've got our account types here, which can be used in a couple different applications. Basically, another way to categorize or classify accounts aside from account groups themselves. So we can name these whatever we want, and each system can have and use up to 16 of them. What we can do with them then is assign them to individual accounts and to account groups, which means that we can then do some reporting based on account types. These could be used as part of a tiering system, or maybe reference some use or purpose of the account. So, they signed up for gaming, we might have an account type called gaming, or they're a business or some local organization, and we could create different account types for those types of things. This account's assigned to, we could create one just for internal accounts, so on and so forth. So what I'll do is I'll add a few here, and then we'll see how they can be used when we are configuring accounts in just a little bit. And you'll also see a bit later that we can also use the account type as a field within account profiles when we're setting those up, and a whole bunch of use cases for those. But more on that later. If I save this and we do head to our venue settings, there's also a handful of things here that we can set at the venue level that apply to accounts. On the main tab here, we do have some point settings, which I will only point out today. I don't want to spoil the fun of the next lesson when we have a full session on points, but these will work in conjunction with a raft of other point settings to determine an account's eventual points earned and points redeemed in a venue when they are earning and redeeming points within a transaction. Over to the flags tab, nothing that ties directly to anything else that we're going over today, but one that I will point out is in the till operations section down here, and it is this hide account button, which if that's on will do just that on all tills in the venue. It will hide the account button from the till, and you'll see what I mean when we get into Smart Pause later for a brief demo. If I close out of that and we go to our store settings, there's also a points redeem % here, which is related to accounts, but again, we'll be focusing on points in the next lesson. So if I close out of that, there are also some settings that we can set per till. So firstly, there are some points configurations here too. In the default section, we've got an earn profile and a redeem profile. Again, we'll go through those in the next lesson, but as with the venue level and store level settings and account level settings that we'll see shortly, these will factor in to determine the overall points rate when using a specific till. But again, we'll chat more about that next time. Just wanted to mention today because all these point settings are closely related to accounts. So one of the main reasons that accounts are used within BPOS, but they are such a large part of accounts, or can be if the organization is implementing a points program, that they do necessitate their own lesson. Anyway, finally here in the general section, we can set an account group if we would like to limit account lookups at this till to only one account group, or a chain of parent-child account groups if we would like to. Speaking of account groups, we'll cancel out of this and we will check our account list, or we'll check out the account list, and we'll start getting into account maintenance. So that's going to be from the maintenance menu and our accounts list here. So to start off, the account list in a new database is going to look very similar to the operator list and the product list. Not much here, just a couple of placeholder account groups, or really just one placeholder account group aside from the base group. Now, lucky for us, similar principles and concepts and workflows to the other maintenance list that can be applied to the accounts list too. The benefits of the tree-like structure for accounts is that we can set up different groupings depending on the organization's needs with, plenty of flexibility. And that can be very useful in instances where tiering or different account levels are being used. So aside from that, account groups can just be organized in whichever way the organization sees fit. Similar to the operator and product groups, we can have multiple branches of subgroups. So what I might do without putting too much thought into it is just add a few account groups here so that we have something to work with in this database for the rest of the course. So something relatively basic here, just a few external account groups, one of them that has some subgroups, and a couple of internal or staff account groups here. But of course, feel free to create your account list however you'd like to, or however your organization needs it to be. And don't fret if it's not perfect. Accounts and account groups can always be rearranged and made inactive if need be. But now that we've got a few account groups created here, I will add an account to one of them and we can start going through all of the account settings. So to add a new account, especially from a blank database, we are going to need to go add new account from the top. We will then be prompted to select the group to add it to. And notice that these are only the lowest branches in the structure that we're able to select here. In other words, just as with operators and products, we cannot add accounts to groups that have subgroups, only to the bottommost group on a branch. Anyway, I will just go with tier 1A. And then we'll be prompted to either select an existing account to copy or to start with a blank account. Now, obvious implications of copying an existing account is to save a bit of time and keep configurations consistent from one account to the next. Certain settings will be copied over so that they don't need to be reset when creating a new similar account, but none for us to copy, of course, so blank account it is. Okay, so there's no sugarcoating it here. There's a lot here. There's some more explanatory settings, more self-explanatory settings than others. The really self-explanatory things, like what we can see here on the Details and Address tab, we will just leave alone for the most part. But we'll actually start by covering the header section up here. So we'll start with the account number and the card number. You can see these have been auto-populated here, so that will be done simply based on the order in which the account was created. And those are assigned to groups too, by the way, which is why this one, even though it's the first account that we've created, is number 10. These can be changed though, and the account number, I should mention this, the account number is different from the account ID. The account ID we will be able to see at the top of the window after the record is saved. If I slide this out of the way, we can see that is going to be a column within the account list that we can reference there. So we will be able to see that, as well as in account-based reports, we'll be able to see the account ID. The account ID will always stay the same, so that even if the account number or the account name are changed, the ID can always be referenced back to each account record. So yeah, some self-explanatory fields here for title, first name, last name. You can see the asterisk here next to last name is indicating that that is a required field in order for the account record to be saved. In fact, other than the account number, the last name is the only other required field, so the bare minimum that needs to be entered to create and save an account. What I'll do is actually give this account a name, BYOB, of course, and I'll just go ahead and save that for now. So there we go. We can see that's now showing up in our account list for us, and we can see here that it's been assigned the account ID of number 12. By the way, this is what the standard view for the account list will show us out of the box. Some identification and contact info, and a little snapshot of important account data. We've got all-time net turnover that we'll be able to see, any current account balance, and the current points balance. There are a few other views that we'll have available too, and of course don't forget that we can always edit these views and we can add more if we'd like to. I'll show you while we're here too that we can right click on an existing account to quickly copy it and create a new account. I won't actually do that though. I will just reopen BYOB here and we'll continue with our account settings. So now we can see our account ID at the top of the window. Alright, over here on the right, we've got our account group drop down. So if we'd like to manually move an account from one group to another, we can do that. I should mention there are some things that we can set up in the system for accounts to be moved to different groups automatically. That can be based on things like net turnover. That will often be used in systems that do implement account tiers. But we will have to save that for another lesson. We might have time to sneak that into the memberships lesson. But anyway, moving on with this one, we can also set an account status here. So we've got 6 different options for us to choose from that cover a range of possibilities. That could be an account status. Accounts will be set to OK by default, meaning that it's active and functioning normally. On hold, pending, suspended. They will all disable the account, which is different from inactive or deceased. For these 3, the account cannot be used, but will still be shown in the account list and in account-based reports, although they will be highlighted in a dark red color. If I just set this one to on hold, you can see from the account window, it'll take on this salmon color, but if I actually save that, it's going to be this dark red color in the account list. And if that is set to inactive or deceased, it will be inactive, but we can use the inactive flag in the list there to show any inactive accounts, and that will be in that salmon color as well. I'll just go ahead and set that back to OK. But yeah, for inactive or deceased, they will disable the account from being used also. So for these 3, the account won't be able to be used for any transactions. Same goes for inactive and deceased. But as you saw, these 2 will also hide the account from the list and on reports unless that show inactive flag is turned on. Lastly, in the header section here, we can see the date and time that the account was created. Alright, moving on down to the tabs now, we'll head to the main setups tab. There is a lot here, but some of it we will be covering in the points lesson next time. But we'll just start at the top of this tab with the credit limit and this stop credit flag. So, by the way, I should mention this also, we will not be able to demonstrate all of these settings in use today. So some of them will just be explaining sort of what they control and their use cases. But yeah, for these, the credit limit and stop credit, some establishments may wish to extend a line of credit to their account holders. So using the credit limit field, we can set a limit for each account individually. Then, subsequently at some point, we may wish to temporarily prohibit account charges for an account by turning on the stop credit flag. Now just below those, we can also set a discount limit for each account. So maybe for BYOB here, we are going to want to set that to $1,000. What that will do is we'll put a maximum on the amount of automatic discounts that the account can accrue. But just to be clear, what I mean by that is that only applies to discounts that the account receives based on their pricing policy, which we can set down here. That will not take into consideration or apply to any manual discounts or product promotions, only the discounts they receive due to their pricing policy. We will get into this pricing policy section in just a second, but let's just say that based on the pricing policy here, the account receives just a 10% discount on everything. So we might want to cap that at a certain dollar amount, after which, in this case, the account receives a total of $1,000 in discounting based on their pricing policy, they will no longer receive that discount based on their pricing policy. As I said, they will still be able to receive manual discounts applied from the till, and they will still be able to receive any product promotions that are set up and active in the system. Now, there is a scheduled job that we can use to reset the discount amounts for accounts. So if, let's say, for example, this account holder reaches their discount limit, we have a scheduled job that we can set up to reset that back to 0. We will not be going through that specific scheduled job, but just wanted to make you aware that we do have the ability to do that, and we will be overviewing scheduled jobs later in the course, by the way. Alright, let's bypass some of these other settings up here. Most of them are self-explanatory and or will be covered in other lessons. We will skip down to the pricing policy in this grayed out section now. You may be wondering, why is this section grayed out? But you may have also noticed this use group settings flag, which you can probably guess follows similar logic as the one that we have for operators. So we can leave this on if we want the account to adopt these settings in this section from the group that it's in. Similar to the concept for operators, what that does is enables simple, efficient, uniform settings in relation to these point settings and pricing policy and other settings that we can see here, meaning that we can set all these at the group level, and then accounts in the group that have this flag turned on will simply use those settings. That's why it's called use group settings. That also means that if an account moves from one group to another, the settings in this section will change automatically, simply based on whichever group it is moved to. But I will of course need to turn this off so we can actually get into these configurations. Alright, so pricing policy first, and then we'll come back to some of these other settings in this section, except for the point settings, since we'll be focusing on them next time. So for the pricing policy, price number, we're saying here, do we want this account to use the price number that's assigned to whichever till is being used for a particular transaction, or do we want a specific price number to follow this account wherever it goes from any till and to override the till's price number? Remember that these are referring to the price numbers that we can define at the venue level, and then for products we can set different prices for each price number. So there might be some special pricing that the establishment offers to account holders no matter which venue or store they're in, or no matter which till they're using. So maybe this account's price number, which means that whenever this account holder purchases products, they will pay whichever price is set for the product's account's price, even if the till is set to use a different price number. Unless using the till's price number would give them a lower price than this would. Of course, we want to offer the lowest price possible. There is a caveat to that though that we'll get to in a minute. We might not always want to offer a lower price and may want to always enforce the account's pricing policy no matter what. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. Aside from the price number, or along with it, I should say, we could also choose to set up a pricing type per account. And for that, we've got a few options. Now this works along with this pricing discount percent field beneath it. So we could implement something like maybe a 10% discount, or using a different option in here like last cost plus or average cost plus. Products would only cost the account 10% on top of either the store's last cost, if we did last cost plus 10%, or for average cost plus 10%, that would be 10% on top of the average cost in the store. Or we could set it to something like zero price, which would ignore the percentage altogether, just sell everything to the account holder at a full discount. So that might be used for some internal accounts. We could implement this option in here called current item. How that would work, or the workflow for that, is we ring up products first, then we select the one that we want to discount, and then we attach the account to the transaction. Or we could go with highest or lowest priced item to be discounted, in which case it would only be the one item, either highest or lowest, to be discounted in the account's transactions. For simplicity's sake though, I will just set this as discount and we'll leave it as 10%. So how this is set up now, this account holder will receive the account's price number price for products. So any products that have separate accounts pricing in addition to the normal price that's been configured, this account will receive the accounts price rather than the normal price. On top of that, they would also receive a further 10% discount. What I might actually do for now, now that I think of it, is I'll save this as no price change for the pricing type. So when we get into a demo in SmartPOS later, we'll be able to see first that the accounts price will be used for a product, and then we'll come in and we'll update this so you can see how that would work in conjunction with the pricing type. But I should say that along with these options also, we can choose if we want to filter the pricing type to certain sorts or types. So if we use, if I choose to filter to sorts, for example, we'll then get a drop-down populated of the system's product sorts. If I choose sort groups, we'll get the system's sort groups. You get the idea there. So we might want to extend, one of these pricing types to account holders, but opt to limit that pricing type to only a particular sort or type. Or maybe for something like if we are implementing a zero pricing type, and let's say we've got that set for some internal accounts, maybe you would want to offer them zero price for only certain sorts or types within the database. Plenty of other use cases for all of these options that we've got here, though, of course, depends on the system's sorts and types and what accounts are being used for. I will just set that to all sorts and types, though. And then next down, we have our discount totalizer. So which of the system's discount totalizers do we want this account's discounts reporting to? In our example, we probably want them reporting to the account discount totalizer. But again, that depends on how the system's discount totalizers are configured. Maybe some accounts are going to report to one discount totalizer and other accounts will report to a different one. Just depends on how they're set up and configured. And lastly, I alluded to this a few minutes ago, we can choose if we want to force account pricing. So usually the pricing that gets set based on the pricing policy will only be in effect if it is lower than the standard price that would be offered by the till in a particular transaction. However, with this on, the account's pricing policy will be used even if it is going to be a higher price than the standard price that would be used at the time of the transaction. But I'll turn that off. All right, with our pricing policy covered, we will take a bit of a step back here and we'll go over the other settings in this boxed in area that can be set from our group settings. So we've got our account type. We saw earlier where we can maintain these at the global level. So while the account type is a separate classification tool, we might set this one to hobby group or something like, or whichever other option we've got here. I'll just leave it as hobby group for this one. It can be tied directly to account groups, and multiple groups can share the same type. It can then be handed down to accounts that are using the group settings. Or of course, we could not use group settings and we could set that separately per account. And as I mentioned earlier, when we get into account profiles in a little bit, you'll see where that can come into play for those. Well, but moving on down, we've got our cash only flag. So with this on, accounts will not be able to close transactions to account charges. They must use cash, FPOS, or other similar payments, just not account charges. Conversely though, we have charge only, meaning that they can only close transactions using the account charge payment option, of course provided that they have either available account balance or available account credit, and we'll see the account charge option in SmartPOS later. Actually, speaking of which, let me give this account some credit to draw from. Alright, points I've mentioned several times. We'll look at these in the next lesson. And then we have a couple of flags in this section to control if we want to always print receipts for this account, to always email receipts to the account holder. We can set our tax type here, either to just use the each product's tax setting, or to override to always either be taxed or tax-free for an account. And lastly, in this section, we can limit the operators that can sell to an account. And if we're in a multi-venue system, we can limit the venues that the account can be used in, or the venue that the account can be used in. Okay, and then we've got our history section over here. So I do want to point this out because it ties directly to account profiles, which we'll be looking at next. So in this section here, once the account is active and starts coming into the venue and completing transactions, you can basically see some quick stats from right here. So we'll be able to see their balance if it's negative because they're using some of their available credit, or positive if they've prepaid into it, which by the way can be done by an authorized operator, either from SmartPOS or from right here using this account payment option down here. We can actually pay into the account's balance. There is then just a lot of useful stats and information that we'll be able to see here in the history section, but the ones that we can use as part of an account profile are going to be the account balance, the points balance, the net turnover, and the number of visits. So all those will apply to account profiles that we will get to in just a second, but we will just quickly touch on these other tabs also. Not much to explain on the details and address tab. Again, all self-explanatory things here. However, I do just want to point out that the gender and birth date settings can be used within account profiles also. And custom info, which we had a little crash course on custom info for products in the last lesson. We can create some custom fields for accounts too, and they can then also be used for account profiles, as we saw with custom fields and custom info for product profiles. So we can create some custom fields. They can be used either on their own for filtering the account list and account-based reports, but they can also be used to create account profiles and then to use as a basis for filtering, reporting, and also in assigning to promotions. We'll see more about that in a couple minutes. And the membership tab, we can see here that it is grayed out for now. We will discuss why that is and go through that tab in the membership lesson later in the course. Lastly, before we finish up in account maintenance and move on to account profiles though, I just want to point out these buttons at the bottom of the window. With the View Audit History, we will be able to see all of the changes that have occurred to the account record over a period of time. So things like if the pricing policy has been changed, but any other changes that have been made to it. For View Vouchers, we'll be able to see any vouchers that have been assigned to the account and the history of their usage and so on. More on that when we cover vouchers. View Sales, exactly what that sounds like. We'll be able to see all the transaction history involving an account. Send Message, so we won't actually be going through the messaging module in this course, but we do have the ability to send messages to accounts, although some of the flags on the main setup tab here can prevent bulk messages from being sent to account holders. We can message them separately from here. Reprint statement, exactly that, so we can print a statement for the account for a specified period. And refresh screen. So not only will this refresh the stats in the history section here, but it will actually revert back out of any changes that have been made to the account if we've made any and haven't saved here. So if we've applied some changes within maybe the pricing policy or any of these things here, and then we decide that we want to revert out of those changes, if we actually hit the refresh screen button there, that will do just that. As opposed to just canceling out, which we could obviously do also. But what I will do is I will save this. That's going to cover our account maintenance, so that wasn't too bad going through all of the configurations that we have for accounts here. But we will keep this lesson rolling onto account profiles, which we can access actually from the top of the account list here, account profiles. So again, these are going to follow A similar concept to what we saw with product profiles last time, just obviously geared towards accounts and have some slightly different implementation options. But yeah, nothing too complicated about what account profiles are or what they can be used for. Similar to product profiles, what we're able to do with these is create a set of parameters or conditions that an account would need to meet instead of a product, of course. Then we can use that profile for report filtering to only look at those accounts that match to a profile, or for promotions, as we'll see in a little bit, where we can actually configure a promotion so that it will only be offered to the accounts that match to, ABC profile or whatever we decide to call the profile. Only accounts whose parameters match to the profile will be able to receive the promotion. I should point out also that we can access account profiles from the marketing and promotions menu, and if I scroll down to the bottom of that, we can access them separately from there rather than going through the account list. But anyway, we obviously don't have any account profiles created yet here, so I will just go ahead and add a new one. Now, aside from the concept of profiles, the main similarity between product profiles and these is that the configurations are split up into these two tabs. We've got our standard fields, our standard account fields, and then we've got our custom fields. So we won't go through custom field setup again, but you can hopefully probably imagine the multitude of options and possibilities that custom fields and how they could be implemented for accounts. We could create them to capture and track all sorts of other account data that is not captured or tracked anywhere else. So things like we could create obviously flags, text fields to save information maybe about the account holder's interests or food and drink preferences and things like that. We could use maybe numbers fields for some type of ranking or their parking space or something like that, etc., etc. Potentially, of course, thousands of other things. I'm sure you can think of plenty of real life use cases for custom flags, custom numbers, and custom text fields for accounts. Whatever we decide to use them for, we can then interweave them here to add another level to account profiles, which we can then use for things like designing marketing campaigns around them based on the profile's parameters. So if you've got some custom fields that are set up for marking an account's interest or food and drink preferences, we can then use those within the profile. And based on the profile's parameters, then have some marketing campaigns and promotions that are designed specifically for those interests or food and beverage preferences that we are able to save for an account. But anyway, we will focus on the standard account fields. So we already know from the product profiles that by default, all of the parameters are going to be ignored when a new account profile is started, and then we can choose the things that we don't want to ignore. Now, while we don't have all of the account settings to use here for an account profile, we do have quite a mix of options from both the main setups and the details and address tab. Both of those tabs, I should say, that we can use for profiling. So for our base settings here, we can set parameters such as the status or the account type so that we can factor those sort of classification things into a profile. Maybe set this one for accounts with the status of OK, and then have the local sport league account type for it. By the way, we won't get into any use case examples in this lesson. This is a long lesson as it is, and we've only got the one account record created anyway. But based on the product profile lesson, you should have a good understanding of how these could be used. We will run through a quick refresher of some of the components where account profiles can be used, where we do have the account profile drop down to use as a filter or as a setting. Moving on though, for our export codes here, as we saw with product profiles, we will have these equals, contains, these different qualifier options here. And then once we select one, we'll have a text field to use along with that. Over in this little section here, we've got our credit, cash, charge, and earn points flags from the account settings. So for all of these, they're either going to be is true or is false, as we would expect for flags. So these might be important things to consider for a profile. So, we might say that for an account to qualify to this profile, that one of the parameters is that the cash only flag needs to be off, something like that. Cool. Down to our dates section, we've got a few different options here. By the way, didn't know that gender was a date. I think this section might need to be relabeled. I will add that to the suggestion box. But yeah, we've got some based on birth date, we've got some based on expiration date, and some based on a renewal date for members. So once we get into memberships and renewals, that one will make a bit more sense there. So if the account is also a member, we can then use their membership renewal dates as a parameter here. But these birth date related ones, they can be used for some target marketing type of things. So happy birthday vouchers or promotions that are only available for accounts maybe whose next birthday is this month. Or we could do something with the days to renewal or the days to expiration here. Maybe we've got a profile set where it's less than 7 days to renewal, and we could then filter the account list using that, and then maybe message those members and let them know that their renewal is coming up. Maybe we could also use some flags down here, the flag section. So like do not email, do not SMS along with that, so that we would know which accounts will actually accept a certain type of communication and reach out to them. We can also use these options here just to validate if they do have email addresses and numbers set up correctly or not. And down here in the membership section with these membership and renewal drop downs, we can even filter to specific memberships and renewals from the system that an account would need to belong to in order to meet the criteria or the parameters of a profile. So these will make more sense once we go through memberships and renewals, but I'll just point them out while we are here. And then over in our balances section here, so another handful of useful options for either target marketing or to use with some of the scheduled jobs that we have that are related to accounts. So maybe a profile is set to that net turnover is going to be greater than or equal to 5,000. And when an account hits that, so I'll just enter that in there just so you, for visual aid there. So when an account hits that, they will meet criteria of this profile. And we could have, we have a scheduled job called account elevation that can automatically move an account to a higher ranked account group if there's a tiering system or something like that. Or same idea for points balance, if after the points balance hits a certain amount, or for visits, maybe after a certain number of visits. A few different options here that we could use to configure a profile that could then be used with scheduled jobs to do some things like that. And lastly, I know we skipped over this section at the top for account groups, so we can choose to exclude either non-account sales. So in that case, there must be an account on a transaction to qualify to the profile. The use case for these would be for promotions, obviously, not for reporting. Or we can do exclude account sales, in which case the rest of the fields in the profile would be irrelevant. So if we were using that, that would be really the only field that we could set for a profile. But what we're saying there is that the only parameter for the profile is that there is not an account on the transaction, and then only non-account sales would have access to a promotion where that is being used. We can also choose to include or exclude specific account groups. Same concept as we saw with product profiles. So that type of thing could also come in handy for marketing or account elevation purposes there, if we would like to specifically include or exclude certain account groups. But yeah, as far as account profile configurations go, that is a relatively comprehensive look at everything. So what can we do with account profiles once we've got them set up? One of the first things we can do, another similarity to product profiles, is to check or verify which accounts currently meet the parameters of the profile, and we can do that by using this View Accounts button at the bottom. That is going to open an account list with the profile selected. At this point, I haven't saved or named that yet, so it's just going to be in here as 1. So that will filter the account list and only show us the accounts whose settings do match to the parameters that have been set in the profile. Let me just actually save this one as a test. I know nothing here is going to make sense. This is a very strange profile to set up here. I haven't even set dates for here. So probably not how we would quite want to set up an account profile, but just to save that quickly so we can move on with the lesson. So since we can use the profile to filter the account list, yes, as I mentioned, we can also use it in account reporting. So something like if we go to sales reports and we look at the account summaries, we will have the profile drop down there where we can select that and we can filter the report, or as we saw a few lessons back in the sales report creator, we could use it to filter that based on a profile. From there, we could also do something like, of course, save the report while we are using the account profile as a filter. Now, if I head to marketing and promotions and to our product promotions, and I'll just open one up here, we can also add a profile to filter for a promotion or a voucher. So that is where that exclude account sales parameter might come into play. We could create a profile using that and then set it to filter a promotion, making the promo only applicable to non-account sales. But for the cases where we'd require account sales, we can also require whichever other parameters, of course, have been set for the profile for the promotion to actually be active and offered to an account. So maybe we'd have a special happy hour promotion just for a particular account profile. Or in this example here, we could set it so that the only accounts that will receive this $3 off house spirits will have to match to the parameters of the profile that's been set. But yeah, potentially thousands or even, dare I say it, millions of different use cases for combining things like custom fields and account profiles and so forth. I will go ahead and just cancel out of that. Now, I know this lesson is on the longer side. I think we're probably approaching the hour mark at this point, so believe me, I feel you. But one last thing before we finish up is I would like to run through a quick demo in SmartPOS to show you an account sale or a couple account sales. Of course, don't forget that we do have some operator privilege flags that are related. Just open up any operator here. So on the till privileges tab, we have a few here that are related to accounts. We have our account till functions flag right here, which also controls the ability for an operator to even sell to accounts, not just to use account till functions, but to actually sell to an account. Then some separate things here, such as to control the ability to close transactions to account charges or to process account charge refunds. Also, I should have pointed out actually on the maintenance tab, the multitude of account related flags here in this accounts and membership section that control everything from being able to view accounts to edit and maintain them. And then at the bottom, separate flags for being able to view and edit account custom info. Anyway, let me just cancel out of that and we'll get into SmartPOS. Alright, so first thing I will point out is that this little button right here at the top of the transaction window is our account button. So if you recall back to the beginning of this lesson when I mentioned that flag that we have that can hide that button, that is what that is for. So if we've got that flag turned on, this button will not be here. It will not show on tills at all. But if we've got it, we will be able to use that to then select an account. So I will add our BYOB to our account here. In this little top section, we'll be able to see some account information that in this case is going to show us the account group and the account number. But that can actually be controlled from the global settings main tab. If you recall back to, I'll head to the global settings and show you. If you recall back to, I believe we went through this in the System Setup 101 lesson, but we can actually control what information shows there That is this account prompt drop down here where we can select what we want to show. That's why the account group, the account group name is showing there at the moment, is because that's what we've got set. If the account has a balance, we'd also be able to see that here. And if they had a points balance, that would be shown here as well. But once we get into points in the next lesson, we will cover that. So what I might do here with this account active is add some products to it. Actually, before I do that, I will show you from the product list that if we look at this BPOS parallel here and we go to the store pricing settings and we go to the store that till is for, we can see that there's some normal prices set up here. In particular, I'll just go ahead and ring up a jug once we get back into SmartPOS. So for a jug of BPOS parallel, we can see the normal price is $15. The accounts price is $13. Now don't forget that for our one account that I set up in this database that I've been using for this lesson, that we assigned them the price number of accounts price. So when this account purchases products, they should be receiving these prices, not the normal price. So let's have a look. There we go. They are receiving the accounts price for that. Now, I did mention that I would also go ahead and edit that account. And so again, we'll confirm there that they have that price number assigned. What we'll do is we'll actually add on top of that, we'll give them a 10% discount. So we'll set the pricing type up there. We've got our pricing percent discount set, and we do just have that set for simplicity's sake to all sorts and types for that. Go ahead and save that. I will cancel that transaction. We'll add that account again and just add that same product, same size again. In this case, we can see that in addition to receiving the account price based on that portion of their pricing policy, they are also receiving a further 10% discount on top of that, bringing their transaction total, or the product total in this case, to $11.70. So I might just add a few other things to our transaction here for BEPOS, so we can see the discounts that they'll receive for all these based on their pricing policy. And once we've got a couple things added there, we might go to payments, and we can close this out to an account charge again, provided that the account can close out transactions to account charges and that the operator is able to process account charges as well. But I've got all that set up so that we can do this. In that case, it's just closed out just like that. We can see quickly before that closes, or before the screen refreshes here, their account balance is now in a negative because they are drawing from their credit limit. And if we actually then open the account now, we'll be able to see their history here. So we can also reference here their negative account balance. We can see their gross turnover, their net turnover. So the difference there, obviously based on their discounts that they've received. We can see the current discounts here. We can see they've visited one time, the last transaction, the last date in sale. Once they've got some points accrued and earned, we will be able to see that sort of stuff here also. If we come ahead and view the account sales here, we will be able to see that transaction. We can open that and see some detailed stuff there. We could even go ahead and see our key logs for that transaction. Cool, close that stuff. And the last thing that I will show you before we wrap this lesson up, if I just cancel out of that, is I will show you our till balance report with account charges showing. And of course, we can also see the account discount that has been applied, the package discount due to the package selection, or package fixed product that I had added to that transaction. And if we look down here, we can see our account charge that has been applied there. And then down in the account details section, we can see that along with the account turnover. Actually, one final thing that I'll show you. I know I said that would be the final thing, but I do just want to show you a different workflow. If we have the pricing type set here to current item, and I'll leave that as 10% and save that. Now in SmartPause, the workflow is going to be to add the products first, and we can confirm here because there's no account attached that is receiving the normal price there. So we'll just add a few different products here, and then we can, and then we can select a product here. And when I add an account now, I'm going to be prompted to select the reason for the discount. But based on that pricing policy and the workflow there, where we've added the products first, then selected the products that we would like to discount for the account, then added the account to the transaction, that product is the only one that's going to be discounted based on the pricing policy. This pina colada here has been discounted due to an active promotion. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that example as well. But that is going to do it for this lesson. We've seen quite a bit related to accounts and account profiles today, so I won't do a wrap up. But as always, thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and we'll see you in the next one.